This is exciting, isn't it, Thommo? Hello and welcome to the weekly Shakeout with Paula's Run Club, with me, Paula Radcliffe.
And me, Christopher Thompson. More
And
of
what
us.
we're going
More
to
of
do
us.
now is, well, it's more of you actually. It's more of the listeners, isn't it? It's more of the interaction.
Well, yes.
Because we have really felt that we haven't had enough time to get to all of the questions. And I'm being brutally honest here, it's the bit I absolutely love. I love listening to the guests, but I love the interaction. And for me, that is what's special about the running community and about this run club. And want to get to more of those questions. So we are going to use this episode just to basically crack on with some of the messages that you and the emails that you've been sending in and the messages on socials and things like that. So I'm going to, without further ado, just jump straight in to the first email from this week, and it is from Tony Shenton, and it says, "Hi Paula and Thommo, great to see that your podcast is back. As you may already know, this weekend it was the Western State 100-mile race, and amazingly the winner did it in just over 14 hours, so we are getting to you a little bit later. This did come in at the end of June. Did or would you ever do an ultra? UTMB would be my dream, and do you think more elite marathon runners will do so in the future as the prize money and sponsorship deals continue to grow? I'll be very cheeky and ask another couple of questions if I may. How much would you say has been learned about training, mileage, nutrition, rest and recovery over the last decade or so? And what do you know now that you wished you had known when you were competing? Looking forward to hearing from you soon. Best wishes, Tony Shenton." Okay, right. So let's go with the first one first, shall we, Thommo?
Yeah.
Do you want to do an ultra?
In a word, yes.
Yeah.
I do, because my motivations for doing it is that it feels like for a lot of people, like, am I physically capable of doing it? I question myself if I can do it, which makes me drawn to want to try and do it, because I know the journey I will go on to achieve it will be very rewarding, not just physically but mentally, because I've always been I never liked in my life feeling like I can't do something, and I've always been drawn to finding a way to doing it, and so an ultra represents that for me, or something that also I'm terrible with twisting my ankle, so again it would offer the spatial awareness and what's that word with the
Proprioception.
Proprioception. You?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, and not for the reasons there actually. And Tony talks about the prize money and the sponsorship deals growing. Actually, I think it is just the draw that it is that ultimate challenge. And for me, Comrades was something that I kind of had on my bucket list, maybe inspired by the fact that Crammy went out there and did it. But it was something that I really did want to do. Now I've just kind of had to strike that balance with my foot, that might be just asking a little bit too much. I already learned that a marathon on the road might be asking a bit too much at this point. So it kind of is one that's up there. And I think, like you just alluded to, I think I'd be more likely to be able to get it done actually over the trails. So that would be something I would love to do. And so moving on to your later questions, Tony, how much would you say? I think we're always learning. So you look at the last decade and there's been huge advances on the technology side and also on the learning side. And it's maybe not talked about as much, but I do think that the learnings and the nutrition side and rest and recovery and the importance of that are really, really important and big factors in how much times have been improving. And what do you know now that you wished you knew when you were
Can I just go back to that bit a bit? And I would say on the how much has been learned, I do think when a goalpost gets moved, it has an effect on other goalposts. So with the shoe tech, it's altered the nutritional demands for a marathon. And so I think as technology improves, as you know, there's a lot of progress with gels, which also alters training. So it all kind of, as one thing improves, it doesn't just affect nutrition, it affects training, it affects everything. So I think that's where at the moment I feel like there's a real burst of desire to keep furthering human endurance at the moment. And I think we feel like we've mastered it all, but something comes along and we haven't. So I think it bounces off each other and it's constantly improving. But what have you? When you were just saying, what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were competing?
Well, I don't know. Anyone who was listening to the episode we did with Ewan earlier on, I think it's that perspective, and I think it's very much that when you're in the competing, A, you're younger and just haven't been through life and a lot of the things that you learn from life, but B, you become stronger through the things that you go through, and you gain perspective with that. And I think that's kind of what I wish, if I could go back and say something to my competitive self as a junior when I was just getting started, it would be just to keep stepping back out and looking in from the outside and see the full picture, because you can get very, very focused on the picture right here and now, and we all do it. We're getting ready for a race and something goes wrong and it's suddenly everything's panic, and you don't see the bigger picture that you've done the majority of the training getting to that point. And it is really about making sure that you take the time to focus and get healthy before you move on with the goals.
Yeah, my one is it took me a long time to realise that being my best, I sense it was realise, not realisation, but accepting that being my best on a given day, when that's not good enough, that's fine. That was something when I was a kid. I people talk about fear of failure. It's not fear of failure. It's not, and I don't want to use the word fear. It's the accepting that being your best on that given day may not be enough to win that race, and it doesn't matter, because you go away and you be your best on the next day, and it might be enough. And sometimes being your best doesn't get you what you want, and that was something that I'd wish I'd cottoned on to sooner. It sounds obvious, but we can be easily forgiven to get wrapped up more in outcome goals and other things, to realise that, you know what, it's okay if you give it your all and you just do fall short. That's fine. That doesn't make you rubbish. It just means on that day you need to brush it off and move on. That would be my thing.
Yeah. Excellent. So do you want to move on to the next one?
You've moved that across. I love that you've moved that into
efficiency here, isn't it?
Efficiency. This is from Tim Sanders. Paula, Chris, enjoying podcast second edition, listening from Canmore, Alberta, Canada. Awesome. I've tried for 10 consecutive years to get into London without success. First ran it in 1983. That would have been the second or third edition.
Yeah, and it was easier then to get in, to be fair.
Yeah, very much so. Rehab is a huge issue, especially the mental side, which largely goes unmentioned. Take away the running from a runner and it's tough. I've been through cancer, stroke, heart surgery, and more recently quad tendon rupture ×2. Wow, that's a lot. It's a tough journey, and I could write a book on it. I'm 60 now and still as enthusiastic as when I was 16, though speed is somewhat slower. So looking forward to running Hadrian's Wall mid-July. Awesome. We know someone who lives very close to that.
We do.
Building up to my 100k ultra here in Alberta. It's not a question, more of a statement. When talking about rehab, please never forget the mental health journey. How did I get into running? Simple. To escape the physicality of rugby at school. Thanks, Tim Sanders. I think it's funny. There's something that dawned on me when I was going through a lot of my injuries and a lot of my kind of rehab processes. And you've obviously been through this a lot, Tim, and like, crikey, what an incredible... I'd read that book. It sounds like you've been on one heck of a journey. And I know you're saying you're making a statement, but I think injuries is a real mental struggle. And one little tip I gave to someone who was going through an issue was around structuring rehab around timing in a day so that you could box it. So what I suggested to them, if a suitable time to do a rehab is 9 o'clock in the morning before your day starts, or 6 o'clock in the evening, just pick a time window where that's where you dedicate half an hour, 20 minutes to your rehab. And then once it's done, you park it up. Because one of the issues I had with rehab is I would always carry this, could I do another exercise? Could I do more? What else can I do to fix it? And that weighs you down with that constant worrying and thinking, what more can I do? And if you can box it in a time window in a day, you know you can spend 23 to 23 and a half hours forgetting about it because you've done your bit for the day and you move on.
And I think that ties into what Tim's really alluding to here, is saying that the mental health side and rehabbing your mind and your brain is as important as a muscle. And it's so true. And thank you, Tim, for pointing this out, because like your mind is a muscle essentially, and it can get injured by being hurt and by the different emotions that we go through. And you've kind of got to build that resilience and that tensile strength back into it to be able to get the full use out of it. So as much as you're talking about there, Thommo, doing the exercises, while you're doing those exercises, you are doing a little bit of mental health training as well by recognizing that's my weakness. I'm going to do too much. So I'm going to work around that and strengthen that and set my own boundaries of how much time I'm going to do on it. Another technique for people who maybe don't do enough and find, okay, it's not enjoyable, so I don't want to do the rehab side of it, is to think about the time that you would allocate to the training and then allocate it to the overall rehab process. And that will be at some points icing, it will be stretching, it will be doing the re-strengthening exercises, and it will be also working on your mind for that part of it as well. So try and tie all of that in with the cross training as well.
Do you know, that reminds me of a really nice story of Hannah England. The year she, and I'll jump to the conclusion, when she got her World Championship silver medal. I remember we were in Font-Romeu just before those championships, and she'd been injured that winter and going into the summer, and she wasn't a big cross trainer. So she was doing a rehab, but she had to get off the injury, and so she was doing a lot of cross training. And her now husband Luke, who's a very successful steeplechaser, said to her, "Why don't you view an hour as an 8-mile run?" So so rather than on a cross trainer and where do you go with it, she was mimicking what she would do in running, but in time-wise, just as you said, on a cross trainer. And she ended up doing a lot more cross training or a lot more aerobic work than she possibly ordinarily would have done because of shifting that mindset. And she went on to win a World Championship silver. Now, that may be me assuming that that's part of why she felt like it helped to get that medal, but I definitely think there was a mental component to that to make her feel like she wasn't losing or falling away, so she could turn up and win it. We should get her on and get her to talk about it, but I definitely think,
we absolutely should.
And your husband Gary as well with his I'm doing this the Nordic ski machine. We need to get Gary on to talk about that because I love that machine. But anyway.
No, that is a really great one. So moving on to the next one. This is from Alex McGuigan. And Alex's question: Hi, Paula and Thommo. Just wanted to say I love the podcast and used to listen to it on all my long runs while training for the London Marathon. So I'm glad it's back now as I'm training for Chicago in October. And that is coming up fairly quickly, actually. Now, what would we be about? 8 weeks? 8 weeks to go?
Oh, crikey, yeah, 10.
Is it?
Maybe 10.
No, maybe 10. So you're in a good place right now. I wanted to ask if you have any tips for doing a marathon abroad, as it will be my first one outside of the UK that I'm doing, and I think the time difference should be okay with it being 5 hours behind. I'll be waking up earlier anyway. Any tips would be much appreciated. Thank you, Alex. Chicago is a great, great marathon. Alex, you will absolutely love it. I actually had this question with someone I met at the weekend talking about this, but they were petrified of flying as well. We're talking about how they were going to deal with that. And usually going in a couple of days before for Chicago is a good thing. It's an early morning start, Chicago. Certainly it was when I did it. It was 7:30. So that meant getting up really to have your breakfast around about 4 a.m. So to be honest, being 5 hours behind is not a bad thing at all. And I would actually advise, and I did advise this lady, when you get into Chicago, you're going to feel like you want to go to bed about 7-8 o'clock in the evening on that first day. Not a bad thing to do that and kind of try to stay on that. It is easy in the US to find restaurants that will serve you early on as well for your pre-race meal. So staying on that will just fool your body a little bit into thinking what you've got a midday start or even a 10, 11 a.m. start, which is probably a lot nicer for your body. So I don't look on it as a bad thing. It is a brilliant, brilliant course. You start and finish roughly in the same place, which is actually quite helpful for getting back to hotels and things afterwards. So that's a good thing with it, and very, very well organised. And I would advise, just going in maybe on the Wednesday, Thursday before, and staying on that time zone a little bit. You're obviously going to swing one way or the other, but try and stay predominantly on kind of the European side of it.
My one thing to add is when you're dealing with a long haul flight, especially close to a marathon, is drink. hydration is a big challenge when it comes to long haul flights. So please make certain you've got plenty of water when you get on the flight and during the flight and after. And even if that means getting up a lot to wee, it's worth it. So that would be my one big tip when it comes
Definitely.
to long haul flights.
That's a really, really good one. Keep doing that. Maybe take some energy bars as well, so you keep your stores topped up on the plane. And compression socks are not a bad idea either when you're going to be sitting for as long as you are on a transatlantic flight.
Yes, so we're on to Evie. Evie Hickett's London Virtual. Cool. So, hi, Paul and Chris. I really enjoyed your marathon podcast last year, and I'm thrilled. It's not quite last year. It feels like last year, though. We've been going a while. And I'm thrilled that you're back for more running content. In the intro episode, you briefly discussed the London Virtual as an option for those who are disappointed not to have been successful in the ballot. I have run the London Virtual twice and want to share a bit about my experience in case it motivates people who might be sitting on the fence to click the button. Awesome. I'm very happy you've written in for this. I was really surprised at how well the virtual event was organised and how much you do get a sense of belonging to the wider marathon family. You get a number and a race pack before the event, which includes your own finish line and access to an app which gets you into the spirit and provides on the day content. The process to upload your evidence for doing the run is really straightforward, and shortly afterwards you receive a finisher t-shirt and a medal in the post. After doing it this way a couple of times, I actually found it quite difficult going back to the real event, where I had to physically get myself to a start line and start at the prescribed time by the organiser. For anyone who is considering this as an option, my experience has been really positive. If you're a goal-orientated person, then this might be a great approach for you. My biggest tip is actually a tip for your chief supporter. The second time I competed the virtual, my husband was waiting with the finish line and finisher's t-shirt from a previous event along with an old medal. So I did actually have somebody to put the medal around my neck at the end, and this felt like the icing on the cake. Thanks for inspiring content and the company on the long runs. Looking forward to this season. Eva from Santos, not far from me. I wonder where you did it. She might have done it very close to where I live, but that's amazing.
That's so nice.
It paints a lovely picture around the because I think some people can be kind of put off by the fact they're not part of the melee of a marathon, but she makes some really good points about you can pick your own start time to fit around your needs. I think that's a really good point. And also creating your own finish line with your support team and having people along the way can really make it feel special. And London do a good job of like she said, all those uploads and everything. And I think that's a really lovely story to share, that we might end up with our own virtual 60,000 runner event.
No, but that is so nice. Thank you so much, Eve, for sharing that, because I do think it's so special for people who are sitting there disappointed because they didn't get in through the ballot. This is an option, and I love that idea. Maybe we should now create, through the Run Club, groups of people that might even do it together, and then we can have all of their supporters at that finish line and get the finish. I love the idea that they send out the finish line tape, and that she kept the medal and the t-shirt from previous ones to be able to hand that, so you finish and you've actually done it. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Eve, for sharing that, and good luck to anybody else who's done that. Maybe share yours on how that went as well. That would be really, really cool.
That's awesome.
So I'm now moving on to Andrea Roman. Hi, Paula and Chris. I'm so happy you two are back. At the start of this year, I followed your podcast every week while training for my first ever marathon. I was aiming for a 3:50 at Copenhagen, and your episodes were genuinely so helpful and kept me motivated. For my training, I used the first program from the Furman Institute. This is a new one to me, Thommo, which had proved to be successful for the Hackney, Kew Gardens and Olympic Park half marathons. I followed it to the letter and honestly never felt so good. But on week 14-16, a sharp pain developed in my tibia. An MRI showed a medial tibial stress response that could have turned into a stress fracture if I'd raced. Making the decision not to run was really, really tough, but I know it was the right call. I still went and had the best time cheering on for my partner and my friends. So now I'm back on the horse. I've secured a charity place for the London Marathon 2026, well done, running for the Bike Project. a charity that provides bikes and cycling lessons to refugees, giving them the freedom to move. That's brilliant. I'm so excited to support them. What I'd love to hear from you both is this. How would you recommend building a solid base again this year so that when I start my next 16-week training cycle, I'm in a better place to avoid injuries and go for that sub 4 again? Any tips or episodes you'd suggest I revisit would be amazing. Thank you so much for all the inspiration and for making the miles go by faster. That's from Andrea. I'm going to go straight in with go back to the Jared Hartman one, because I do think that overall strength and conditioning is really important. Fairly short all the way through. We've talked about listening to your body. I don't know, Tom, the other thing that I would say add in is off-road running as much as possible, and maybe go back and revisit the shoe episode, and we'd love to try and get maybe Tony or somebody else back on to explain about the shoes as well, because sometimes your shoes wearing out can predispose you to that. So a medial tibial stress response basically is in your main shin bone. And the stress response is the stage before it goes to a full-on line through the bone, which is a stress fracture. It doesn't actually move out of place. You're not in danger of fracturing it when you stop at that point, but you could be if you tried to run through it, and particularly tried to run a marathon. So absolutely, you made the right call, Andrea, and taking the time to strengthen it up and making sure that you perhaps incorporate massages into your training schedule just to stop the calves and the muscles up the front of the shin as well from getting overly tight. That can also be a factor when you're doing a lot of running. There's a lot of repetitive stress on those muscles and ligaments, so making sure that they are recovering well. Ice baths, Thommo, leads us into that again. Like so fluidly into that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like yeah. It's becoming a theme. Yes, no, I will get in it. So skipping along, I think just to when we talk about going down in distance in preparation for a marathon, part of that logic is getting yourself conditioned to do the longer stuff. So when you're running a bit faster, there is a little bit more force through the ground, and you do get slightly better mechanics in your body. And so before you start that training cycle, yes, there is the gym, everything that Paula said, but there's also a mechanical help to running quicker, to help you be a little bit more mechanically efficient, not just for performance wise, but also for injury prevention on the slower, longer runs. So I would visit sort of those shorter, you don't have to necessarily race, but shorter reps with longer recovery, kind of 10k, 5k type efforts, and just get yourself into a kind of robust mechanical machine to complement all the stuff that Paula just said, because it is part of that equation.
The only other thing I would add in, Thommo, is TheraBand stuff. So if anybody doesn't know what a TheraBand is, it's kind of like the stretchy elastic thing. I don't know about you, but we've permanently got one tied around a table leg somewhere in the house, and
you basically call it an elastic thing?
Yeah, it's a stretchy band, isn't it? Elastic band. I know. It's like a big elastic band, and they come in different colours for the different strengths of the elastic. So you probably want to be starting on something like a red one and moving up through blue to potentially black in the end. But basically, just sitting down on the floor with it around the front of your foot, and as simple as 3 sets of 10, pulling your foot back towards you, inverting it and towards the outside, is really, really good for strengthening up those muscles and ligaments we were talking about that run up the front of your shin. So they're not your, that's what's called tibialis anterior, isn't it, is one of them, and posterior would be the other one, and bits of the calf as well, but also works the foot muscles. And so that is a really, really strong thing to add in.
It is, because it is literally, in a nutshell, it's about trying to get yourself bilaterally strong. And that's what a lot of these things are, trying to offset that. We're getting a message from the producer to say one more. Yeah, that last one. I apologize. We're doing a long episode. Sorry, Dave. I know. I'm reading out. He's in the window right now. Just come on.
That's because you didn't read his message. Come on, crack on with the last one.
Sorry. God, I'm getting told off left, right, and centre. What am I up to?
Tom, read the one from Tom. Thommo, read the one from Tom.
Thommo, read the right question for the bod. Please please. I'm reading it out as it so there's lots of E's in that please. Okay, I'm getting a nod from Dave. He's gone now. He's disappeared. Right. Oh, he's back again. He's waggling his finger. Anyway, right. Hi both. Came across the pod in the last few months and devoured it quickly. Very glad you've decided to carry on. I'm running Richmond Marathon in September. Fantastic. I've done that race. And I'm about 9 weeks into an 18-week block. I've done 3 half marathons in the past, but this is my first marathon. I've just found out that the water stations only hand out 2/3 of a cup of water every few miles. I plan to carry 2 times 50 milliliter soft bottles of fluids, but I'm concerned that this is going to be nowhere near
500.
enough. What did I say?
Two times 500, not 50 mils. Because
Sorry,
there's a big difference.
2 times 5. Yeah, it is. Sorry, 2 times 500 milliliters. That's my dyslexia kicking in, like my speed read in my brain. 500 milliliters soft bottles of fluid, but I'm concerned this is going to be nowhere near enough given how little is being handed out. For context, I'm aiming for a finish time somewhere between 4 hours, 4 hours 15, and it's a flat course. Average temperature is supposed to be up to 20 degrees. Should I burden myself by carrying a larger water bladder in my pack, or will my bottles with the cups on the course be enough? Cheers for all your help so far. 2/3, I don't know how, 2/3 of a cup every few miles. The thing with that time of year is it does come down to the temperature, because I know you're saying supposed to be about 20 degrees. It's once you start getting to mid-20s to 30s that I'd like to think the organisers would probably hopefully add a little bit more water. So there will be a duty of care to have enough water on course, but for any of these big marathons, to ensure they match the conditions that you face on the day.
It is a tough one.
It's a really tough one.
Because it's the weight of carrying it. I mean, I do think, obviously, Tom, you've probably trained carrying those bladder packs and you're used to that weight. That is a litre of fluid. So that on top of getting the full 2/3 of a cup, I think would be enough. The danger is, obviously, as we've talked about lots of times on the podcast, the difficulty of drinking out of that cup and how much actually goes into your mouth. So I would really advocate walking through the water stations and making sure that you drop that cup down. As Tomo said, I do think if it's really warm, they won't stop you taking another cup as well.
I was going to say
I
exactly
wouldn't
that,
worry about that. I think you can take a second cup. You could even use the same cup and ask them to just refill it again. But I wouldn't worry about having to carry anymore. I think that they will adapt with that. And if you drink 2/3 of a cup, that is still a fair amount. I mean, I'm thinking back to Tokyo, where literally it was maximum 1.5 centimetres in the bottom of the cup. And people still got through and they weren't able to carry in the fluids, and they did manage to get through. It is about a comfort thing, but I think that is a very good security blanket that you've got on your back. You know you've got that there, particularly in the early miles if it's warm. Make sure that in those early drink stations you are taking the entire cup of water and dropping that down. And also think about putting electrolytes into your ones that you're carrying with you. You can't obviously drop that into the water on the course, but make sure that you've got that full electrolyte balance in the ones that you're carrying around to maximise it.
Yeah, because I think of there was a marathon I did in abroad, and it was only a bit of a fun run, so I took 2.5 hours to run, but there was a water station every mile. And because it was before sunrise and it was very humid, I found myself drinking a lot of water, more than I would normally. And it actually was a negative, and it actually flushed out a lot of my vitamins and minerals. And so there is a balance. And the other thing I would say is, leading up to that marathon, I would like to think you will face the conditions you will race in. And if you're going to do a long run of 3.5 hours, monitor the kind of amount you feel you need and where your sweet spot is, so that it will help you gauge on the day what you need. I wouldn't, because it's your first marathon, I don't fear, but if psychologically, if you can have someone on the side of the course that just is your safety blanket, of someone, a support member is stood there in case you feel like you get into trouble, if that mentally makes you feel better, then I would suggest doing that, because Richmond is very accessible for someone just to be stood there with something. But on the surface of it, like Paula says, take 2 or 3 cups if you need to, stop and chill out, fill up your bottle more if you need to, but add electrolyte. These are all genuine and make sense concerns, but it will all make sense on the day, I'm sure, and you will be exposed to a lot of these conditions, and the event should adapt. So hopefully that helps.
Hopefully, and very best of luck, and please let us know
Yes.
how you get on. And
Yes.
thank you to everybody for listening to this weekly shakeout of Paula's Run Club. Please do keep those questions going in. It is on socials to @Paula's Run Club, and the email address is paulasrunclub@momentumbroadcast.co.uk. The WhatsApp number again, and we would love a voice message to respond to, is +44 756 474 7914. This has been another Momentum production. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you now twice next week.
Yeah, we got through some of them, but we've not got through all of them. We promise
we
will keep trying to keep up with the questions and keep trying to answer as much as we can. And we apologise. We want to engage with all of them as best we can.
And thank you.
And thank you very much.